So you go out and get yourself a copy of the Conan the City of the Dead book here, and you're sitting around and you're finishing through book 1, and you're getting into book 2, and you're saying to yourself, okay, book 2, this is just gonna be epic. And you're about 10 pages into it, and then you stop, and you go, wait, what? That's right, something happened between the end of book 1, the Emerald Lotus, and the beginning of book 2, the Living Plague. What? Kree-ga! Bundle. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Welcome to the library. I'm coming to you from here today because, well, something did happen. In fact, the something that did happen was a whole story called Black Starlight. Now, this is not going to be a spoiler-free one. This is going to be the Interrupting Cow video that comes right between video number 1 and part 2 on our review of this overall book. For those of you who don't want to know what happens in this intervening story, stop. For crying out loud, stop. What we're going to do today is I'm going to walk you guys through the actual story. It's a 12-part serial that was put out in issues, well, 1 through 12, of the 2019 Conan the Barbarian series from Marvel. And at the end of this one, we're going to wrap this whole thing up and we're going to say, well, hold on. Did you actually need to read this in order to be able to enjoy part 2 of this wonderful book? Well, let's find out together. Okay, so listen, something happened in there. And the something that happened in there, as I mentioned earlier, was this whole story called Black Starlight. Now this, again, I cannot say this enough, guys. Spoiler alerts like crazy on this thing. In order for me to talk about this story, I have to talk about who survives the first book from part 1 of City of the Dead, i.e. who survives Emerald Lotus. If you don't want to know, because you haven't read it, stop. Just jump to the part 2 video because this isn't really going to be anything we're discussing in part 2 at all, and there will be no spoilers with regards to this. Now, for those of you who are still here, here's what we're going to do. We're going to turn the old camera around here. I'm going to go sit at the desk because it was leg day today, and standing here is freaking killing me. All right, let's get a load off of these feet because I'm carrying way too much darned mat. Wow, that poster actually looks pretty good over there. You know, it's funny. As time is passing between when these videos are coming out, because I'm shooting these things over months of time. And actually, I'll tell you why in this segment. But within that, I've got that poster and the poster over there, which you guys can't see, that have both recently been put up there. They actually look pretty darn snazzy. Mounted those on that strong board myself. All right. We've talked spoiler alerts enough. I've warned you guys that we're going to go through this, and now is the time. So let's talk legality for a minute here. Not legality as in I'm going to do something bad, but legality as to who can publish what, when, where, and how. All right, so when Emerald Lotus was written, now we're talking back in the 90s, there was some positive reception to that. I know this because I Googled it. That's what told me. And with that, John C. Hawking then sat down and said, okay, well, I'm now going to write The Living Plague. But I guess there was some legal, I'm going to call it schmozzling. Yeah, schmozzling, that's the word we're going to use. There was some legal schmozzling, so the result of it was, it just went into limbo. So you go all the way forward now to 2024, and finally everything is legally sorted out, and that thing can come out as one solid book. And we'll talk about the part 2 and do our review of The Living Plague in a subsequent video that's going to come out later. To give you guys some context, I have actually read The Living Plague as of the recording of this. So hindsight being, I can actually talk to this story as it relates to that for you guys. That's kind of important. But before all of this, let's go back in time now to 2019. 2019, Marvel puts out this series. That's 2019 Conan the Barbarian series, which was then later collected into this hardcover and continued on past issue number 12. But in the first 12 issues, they decided to include the continuation of The Emerald Lotus, written by, guess what, John C. Hawking. So it's all included within there, and it continues along the original 1990s story, which at that point in time didn't have a continuation. And, well, I'm not going to steal any thunder, actually, still doesn't really have a continuation after this. We'll get to that later. So here's the deal. They put this thing out in this 12-part series, and when I hear this, I think, oh, thank goodness, I happen to own that in this wonderful hardcover. So I go and I grab my hardcover, fumpity, because I've gone 10 pages into story number 2, The Living Plague, and I've recognized, no, something's not right here. I've gone to the interweb and I've looked up what's going on. I've learned about the Black Starlight, and I'm saying, great, now I have a chance to read it. Flip. Flip it, why am I looking at a whole bunch of variant covers? Flip it, flip it, flip it. I'm at the back of the book. There's no prose conclusion in this at all. Legalese. I'm going to blame this all on legalese because I'm sure that's probably the only rational explanation as to why this has occurred. Why would you have all 12 parts of this sitting here published in the comics, but when you collect them again and put them in a hardcover, you don't put them in there? The only reason I can think of, legalese. What do I know? Maybe somebody who knows down below and let me know. You know what, John C. Hawking, if you're watching this video, if you know and you can talk and you can tell me, I'd be willing to listen. Here's the deal though. When I looked and I found that it wasn't in there, I did find out that it is available in electronic copy, and you guys, if you want to, can go out there and buy that today, and you can read it today without having to go and find all those comics. In fact, when it was originally published in 2019, it was also available in electronic copy then. I know this because when I read the stories that are sitting in the 2019 comics, there's a link at the bottom. It says that if you want to read this online, you can read it here. If you follow that here now, it takes you to the Heroic Signatures webpage, which is actually pretty cool because, you know, those are the guys that actually own the whole Conan license. And it kind of makes sense that it's full circle and it's back there. Anywho, this is not an issue that's Marvel's fault. This is not an issue that's Titan's fault. I'm sure this is not an issue of the author by any means. This is strictly an old man foible that I have where I can't read electronics. So to me, I need to go and pick up all these. And I can tell you, these videos are quite delayed in coming out. And this is coming full circle back to that comment I made earlier. Why are these taking so long? Well, because I had to go out and buy 8 of the 12 issues of this series so I could read this before I finished part 2 of that, because I didn't know if I needed to read this before I read part 2 of that. That's right. I went out and had to find the missing issues of this by going to local comic shops and futzing around and shopping online. And you know what? When you're shopping online on these things, because Lord knows resellers are not going to try to do you any favors on these blasted things. They know they've got you over a barrel. I can tell you, issue 9 of this was the last one I needed to buy. Issue 9 I ordered from a Canadian shop online. I placed the order knowing it was the last one I needed. The order sat for 2.5 weeks without any activity taken on it. I emailed after 2.5 weeks and I said, hey, what's going on with this? And the response I got was, oh, sorry, that's our bad, sort of laughing it off. And they then processed it and it was in my hands like 3 days later. I got to tell you, that added 2.5 weeks, that was just a kick in the balls I didn't need at the end of this whole process. Just my 2 cents. Anywho, got the books, sat down and read them. Read them in one afternoon, and I will tell you, I am a hell of a slow reader. So what that tells you is how short this novella was. It was a very quick one. Let's get into what it is. All right, spoiler alerts are all out there already. I'm not going to feel bad if you're listening to this and you don't want to actually know this. These survivors of Emerald Lotus are Conan, Zalandra, Hang Shen, that is the name, Hang Shen, and Nisa. Time has passed. They have left the stronghold of Ethereum Fall, and they are on their way back to Akaria. Now, it's very important that I said Hang Shen's name correctly, because Hang Shen, who was Zalandra's manservant, mute person in the first movie, is now a much more important role in this one. He is now Zalandra's lover, and to a large extent, is helping her take care of one of the largest outstanding issues and items that was sitting left unanswered at the end of Emerald Lotus. At the end of Emerald Lotus, Zalandra has, and Conan and everybody else, through their actions, have led to the destruction of the plant that produces the drug that Zalandra is now addicted to. If Zalandra can't get this, she is going to die. The plant is dead. There is a source, a box that she now has of this drug, but that is only a finite supply. Is she going to die? Answer, no, she is not. Hang Shen is helping her wean herself off, and it is clearly explained in this prose piece that she will survive if she's weaned off appropriately. Whew, okay, I can now take a breath. That has taken that piece of stress off of the little OCD Tennessee fats in the back of my mind. I now know she's going to be fine. At least I know that coming into the story. They're on their way back, and this is where administration becomes an issue. If you look at the map over there, they are down in Stygia, and they got to get themselves back up to Akaria. In order to get to Akaria, they need to, as a city, by the way, not a country, they need to cross over the River Styx. Well, the problem being is, when they were on their way south, they murdered a whole lot of people in that city where they crossed the River Styx. That's not a good thing because one of the best ways to leave a bad rep for yourself and make sure that you're definitely not going to be welcome when you come back is by murdering a whole lot of people there, which is what they did. So they need to go past that. They pass that village and go on to a fishing village, which they approach at nighttime, and Conan's looking at it. He's like, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll head down here. We'll pay off these people. One of these fishermen will take us across the river tomorrow, and we'll head back to Akaria. What could be easier? This is just going to be fantastic. I love everything about this idea. They head into town to find it is completely deserted. And I'm not talking a little deserted. I'm talking a lot of deserted. It is just completely empty. And empty to the point where people haven't just fled in an organized manner. They fled quickly. There's a lot of material left lying around. Doors have been left open. Windows have not been shuttered. This is a problem. This would indicate, maybe we don't want to stay here. But they decide to camp out in a TA Vern, otherwise known as a tavern, and they hang out where they can see a larger area around them and decide to bunk out for the night. And in the morning, they'll get up and find some boats, and then they'll just cross the river themselves. They really don't want to get involved in this whole mess. You would call what this is the tempting side quest. And they have said, no, we are going to bed. We're going to get up, get a boat, and GTFO. No side quest for us, thank you very much. Well, that does not work the way they planned it. During the evening, they are beset by 2 mummies. And by mummies, I'm not talking about, the first version of mummies. I'm talking about like the actual Egyptian mummies. Like these are the things that have come back from the dead. And they attack them in a very particular way, in a very intelligent way. One causes a lot of distractions out front, and while that person's doing that, second mummy comes in and steals the Emerald Lotus and takes off. Doesn't kill anybody. No. Au contraire, mon frère. No. I'm just going to steal the Emerald Lotus and GTFO. Conan goes after that thing. At this point in time, they don't know they're mummies. Chases after the thief, catches up with him, myrtleizes him after he realizes that he's a mummy. Kind of difficult to myrtleize a mummy, but he myrtleizes him anyways, and comes back with the Emerald Lotus. While he's there, he's looking around and he's seeing fog, and he's thinking, this is kind of weird, but whatever. Where did these mummies come from? Why? Maybe this is why people left town. Gets back to everybody else to find that Hang Shen has then gone on and murdered the other mummy. Thank goodness. And they said, it's kind of interesting. Why would they have specifically distracted us to steal this? That doesn't make any sense. Considering everybody who knows you have this is dead. Yeah, there is a very pertinent question. So Zalandra, being smart and being a sorceress, says, I got an idea. I'm going to cast a divination spell here and try to figure out exactly what's caused these mummies to come back to life. We're going to figure this whole thing out. Cast this spell, mummy skull explodes. Doesn't really get much answer out of it, other than it's something very foreign to her. But she picked up on an unrelated magical signal to the east. They decide, we'll go check that out, and we'll see what's going on. It's the next day, of course. They do go check it out, and what do they find? They find a witch woman. And unfortunately, it is a dying witch woman. Now, this is interesting. If you go back to Conan the Barbarian movie, you know that classic scene where he finds the witch woman who is young and voluptuous and a temptress. This looks nothing like that. This is the exact opposite of that. This is a very, very old woman who is decrepit in a bed, and she's got a very large dog hanging out with her that is a protector. And, well, she's dying, and this is not going well. And she tells the story, effectively, of how what has happened is the lord of the overall keep, of the area, who lived in the keep just up the way, came down with cancer and started to look to ways to survive, to get around this, and how he was such a nice individual and used her all the time and had her help the locals with the medicine and everything was going really good until, he decided to start sacrificing children. And then really bad things happened and everybody fled the town. And you're like, okay, well, that kind of makes sense. And then she says, but Conan, he was a good guy. What I need you to do is you need to promise me that you're going to go and release him from this evil demon that has taken him over. And Conan agrees. Yeah. It's like, okay. And then, of course, moments later, she passes away. A very cool prose piece of this, though, is when she passes away, the wolf the writing is such that the wolf dog runs out of and goes chasing after it, like he's chasing the soul of the woman as she's leaving. This is the wolf that was the protector of the witch woman. And it's interesting because this reminds me, again, I don't know why, but reminds me of, I believe it is, what was it, Zalandra? Which one was Zalata and which one was Zalandra? I think it was Zalata from the Hour of the Dragon that had that giant wolf that hung out with her. Possibly a throwback to that? I don't know. Anyway, so they say, okay, well, we'll deal with this tomorrow, and they head back over to their camp. And the next day, well, actually not even the next day, that night, I believe, they are beset by these extraplanar flying snake things that don't have mouths, and Zalandra casts a spell. And at that point in time, they say, we better go to the keep and take care of this right now, because this is becoming more and more of an issue, because these are outer planar creatures that are flying snakes that have like leech mouths on them. They're horrifying. They go to the keep and find that there's a dungeon underneath it that's closed, but there's nothing really there. And then they start talking about it like, this is ridiculous. Why don't we just get on the horses and leave? Well, you know what you don't do in a horror movie? Say you're going to get on your horses and leave, because you know what the next thing that's going to happen is? Your horses are dead. In saying that, they get their horses slaughtered because they're heading back to town, and guess what they hear? All of their horses being slaughtered by the leech creatures, because the leech creatures ain't stupid. They're like, no, you're not going anywhere. And what do they find out? Once Zalandra casts the spell, she finds out that the actual Lord does know that she has the Lotus. Yes, he wants it, but it's not the Lord that's talking to her. It's the extraplanar creature that's taken over the Lord's body. Because the very same individual that went and tempted her with the Emerald Lotus up front, Ethram Fall, approached the outerplanar creature. And the outerplanar creature, I guess, was smart enough to say, no, I don't want your stupid drug, F off. Very interesting, but did know about it and knew it existed. And when he sensed that it was coming north or coming towards him, he was like, ooh, well, that drug is just walking right to me, isn't it? I could be able to take over this earth that much the faster. This could go very well for me. This is why he wants the drug. Well, a series of schmozzles occur here. The end of the day, what ends up happening is you have Hang Shen and Nisa trapped in the crypt below the keep. I'm not going to tell you guys exactly how it happens. And Conan decides to climb up the cliff that was behind the keep to find basically the possessed lord there, who at that point in time had captured Zalandra through the very same technique the mummies had used by being out front and distracting and then sneaking in behind and stealing. Didn't see that coming. Conan effectively says to the possessed lord in conversation that, all sorts of back and forth until the point comes when the outer planar creature says, well, maybe you'd like to talk to the Lord. Brings out the Lord, and Conan attacks with such ferocity and upfront that, quite frankly, but this thing could not have seen it coming. Couldn't have reacted in time. Kills the creature, kills the Lord, releases Zalandra, uses an actual elixir on Zalandra. Zalandra is fine, and everybody gets out at the end of the day. That is the story of what happens here. So really, you don't have anything that's going to explain still how you end up at the beginning of book 2. That's pretty weird. All right, now, let's start doing the hard questions here. What did we think of this thing? How did this go? And was this a really good story? Honestly, this was a very good story. This was a lot of fun. Remember how I said earlier, this was the unwanted side quest? This unwanted side quest just happened to this adventuring party. They didn't have a choice in this one. This just happened. And I gotta tell you, this was a lot of fun to watch. And the reason why it was fun to watch was because you had the characters and you'd already seen them develop in the Emerald Lotus. You saw how they've changed. And then they added that little twist in there where suddenly Hang Shen was now the lover of Zalandra. So there's an extra emotional connection between those two, which is written very well and done quite well. The D&D components of this that were a lot of fun were, when you saw the mummy attack up front, and especially when it's labeled clearly by the characters in it, in the narrative, oh, they distracted us and then did this. And then when you see the attack happen the second time, you know what's coming. That I thought was kind of fun. The other cool things about this are the little pin drops, those little hairs that you want to pick at when you're going through a story. You're like, well, wait, that thread doesn't make sense. Why is that sticking out there? For example, when Conan was chasing the mummy and he saw this blurred sort of fog at night, that blurred fog was the very thing obscuring the view of the Lord's Keep, unless you were out at black starlight and you could actually see it at night, because that would show it. Very interesting. The other interesting little thread that was in this was when she cast that spell up front, said, well, I sensed something to the east, but it's not related. And then Conan was like, no. Nothing is unrelated. We're going over it. That was perfect baiting, like you would see in a great Dungeons and Dragons side quest. Very, very well done. And I thought that was a pretty cool thing. Now, I think that's covered enough of the story, and I think that's covered enough of whether it was cool or not. Let's get back to whether you actually need to read this in order to get the second story. Okay, so that was a pretty interesting story. I'm not going to lie. It was actually a really good story. I thoroughly enjoyed reading that. A little disappointed that I had to go out and buy 12 issues of a comic that are back issues that are damn near impossible to find right now in order to get it. But, you know, okay. Did you need to read this in order to get into the second story, i.e. The Living Plague? Well, me recording this interrupting Cal video that comes in the middle, I don't want to talk too much about what happens in The Living Plague. We'll talk about that in the part 2 review video, which will come out later, and you guys can see that then. But quick answer here. Does this actually lead into it? Well, I have the benefit of hindsight, and that I've already read The Living Plague. And let me tell you this, although this is a fantastic story, and I really enjoyed it, you do not need to know this one in order to enjoy The Living Plague. The Living Plague actually picks up further in the history than where this story leaves us. That's right, there's even more between when this story ends, The Black Starlight, and when Living Plague starts. Now I suspect, this is just me suppositioning, that was probably done so they could write more filler in between, which I am 100% supportive of, and I look forward to reading that when it comes out. But quick answer, no, you absolutely do not need to read Black Starlight in order to get Living Plague. Well, there you go. Quick answer right there for you. For those of you who stuck around and who quite frankly went through the whole thing, I got that whole spoiler about what happens in the story, I hope you enjoyed the quick synopsis. And I guess we'll see you in the next one. Have yourself a great day.